G'day gamers, how you going? Just thought I'd give you guys a bit of a build update to sort of show you how it's sort of progressed over the past couple of days, as I haven't put up a video on YouTube for quite some time. So just thought I'd show you where I'm at. Okay, we'll just go over the skills. So now I am running double cast on shock on over two sets. So in the first one, obviously for my damage, I'm running lightning conduit, impetuous, so increased energy, energy retention to trigger half 35%, the refund of it, control destruction, which gives me 30% more damage with hits and ailments and cannot deal crits. We'll come back to that in a minute. And elemental focus, which is more elemental damage. The reason that I'm running control destruction on this first one is because I have the anointment lightning rod. The way lightning rods works is basically lightning damage with your non-critical hits is lucky. So what it does is it re-rolls out of the hits that it would have done and chooses has a chance to choose the highest one. So if I'm doing no crits on this ability here, then this is going to be proccing almost all the time with lightning rod. So the second cast on shock, I'm also using lightning conduit. Magnified effect for the increased area effect. Rising tempest, receive more damage. Strip away and lightning exposure. So the strip away increases the effect of lightning exposure. So every time this goes off, it applies exposure to all the targets within the area. Now, the way I'm getting this to work is obviously this one has a lot more energy build up than the other one does. So this one's at 124%. And then the actual energy gain for cast on shock itself is 233%. And the cast on shock for the other one is 193. So it sort of offsets a tiny little bit so they don't proc at the same time. And the reason you don't want them to proc at the same time is because if they consume the shock, so this one will go off, then this one will go off, and it will, by the time the sparks hit the target, it will leave another shock on the target or two shocks on the target for us to do the damage. Now, I don't use mana remnants anymore. I was using that prior. For the curse, which I only use this for bosses or super tanky rares, I use conductivity, heightened curse, curse crown, and focus curse, just so it has a bit reduced delay. Frostfall, I've been mucking around with this a little bit, so we see a bit of explosion damage. For the boss, you apply that down, does all this little mini explosion stuff. You can use this. I've been mucking around with it. It seems to work okay. Flame Wall, I use this for just general mapping and for bosses. And the way that works and what I'm running is Fortress, Spell Cascade, Persistence, and Fire Mastery. So you put this down, you shoot projectiles out of it. Gives it added fire damage as it passes through. We are using Archmage as well, which is Archmage plus Lightning Mastery to give it +1 to level. Still haven't gotten this to level 20 yet. I will work on it. I think I've got one spare, which I'll do that later. Now with the spark, as you can see, it's not our damage. Like it's done 37,000. I've seen sparks with like 1 million damage and whatnot before, which is fine. But this is just our delivery. So we basically walk around the map just one tapping, just delivering the shocks. Now the way what I'm using is this is inspiration for the reduced cost. Overcharge, magnitude, obviously I'm stacking cast on shock magnitude. Acceleration for faster projectiles, cast speed, interchangeable, you can use something else if you like. I was using cursing currents, which spreads the shock even further. And then mobility, just a bit more movement speed while you're moving around so you're not sort of stuck in place slower than you need to be. Apart from that, the only other ability that I have, which is offer staff, is in my offhand. The stats on it don't matter at all. Alright, basically you put this down for a boss, and as you're casting, spending mana, I'm getting to the point now where I don't actually spend a lot of mana with a spark. It's basically just my lightning conduits. This will start to build up and you'll gain sigil power stacks. You can go increase duration and whatnot on this as well if you want to increase area effect as well, but it's not needed. So that's the skills. Now I'll just show you the passive tree and the ascendancy. So the ascendancy, I've changed a couple of things. So we are playing a Stormweaver, obviously. So the main important one you want to go for is strike twice. This is what allows us to strike the targets twice with a shock. So we apply 2 shocks, and because we're magnitude stacking, we get up to 100% magnitude of the shock, so 100% shock effectiveness, which 2 shocks is 200%, so they're taking 200% increased damage from all sources. Now, if you're looking at a cheaper version than what I'm running at the moment, because my build is definitely not cheap anymore, definitely check out Sugarcane Games. I've been working with her, and she's made a 10 Divine budget version of this build. If you're looking to get it started, you can do this on a very low budget prior to getting into super high investment. The rest of the affinities, Arcane Surge. Obviously, Arcane Surge is cast speed and mana regen, and then we increase the effect with Force of Will. And then the one last thing that I changed to was Scouring Wind, so increase the exposure by another 20%, additional 20%. We do that with our second cast on shock. I was using Tempest Coil for quite some time. It's another option. You can use this, but I've just found that this is where I'm at the moment in the build. This is a bit more viable. All right, now the passive tree. Obviously, I'm scaling and I'm stacking as much magnitude as I possibly can, up to 400% to get the 100% increased effective shock when we apply our shocks with Spark. So I've grabbed all these nodes here. This one here, these few nodes here, up here, which is magnitude there, and then a bit of magnitude here, and the rest of the magnitude that I actually get is from the Adorned. Now, the Adorned that I have is a 60%, right? And then all my jewels basically have meta skills gain increased energy, so our cast on shocks proc more often or build up more frequently, and then I've got magnitude of shock up to the value of 400% magnitude. Right, and then the rest of it is basically a magnitude plus mana on kill. Now this is actually important. You do need at least 1 mana on kill gem to sustain your mana throughout when you're running maps, if you're running double cast on shock. The way I do it is basically one of these. Now this doesn't actually give me 2% mana on kill, it actually gives me the way you work this out is you go 2%, so 100% times divided by 0.6 or times 0.6, sorry, and that 1.6. That actually is the 100% of the 2% plus 60% of this, so that's the 0.6, and that will give you the total value of what it's actually given you on whatever's on the jewel, and it only works on corrupted jewels. Now the rest of them are basically meta skills gain increased energy magnitude, as you can see all the way through. The 2 important notable jewels that I've got, I went and got a controlled metamorphosis, which allows me to traverse down here and grab these points here without actually using up points to get to this. Alright, so we've got Mind Over Matter, and then Touch of the Arcane, which is increased Arcane Surge. You can, if you want to spend points on these here, you can take another 30% increased effective Arcane Surge, which is more cast speed and regen, but you don't necessarily need it, not for a while at the moment. The other important jewel is I grabbed a From Nothing with the Eldritch Battery allocation, and what that does is allows you to assign points around this radius. So if you wanted this one over here, you can grab these without being connected to it. Now we do need to traverse up here and grab this, right? And then because we actually use Eldritch Battery as well, which converts all your mana, all your ES into mana. Whatever ES that you have at the time converts it to it. So we grab this for the chain for the spark, and then we grab these 3 nodes here. So this one here, increase 3% increased spell damage per 100 max mana. Obviously, the more mana, the more damage. 12% increased max mana, and 10% increased mana cost of skills. And the last one is basically your regen. You don't have to take this one, it just depends if you're low on mana regen. So the way this works is I've got 1063, and I start moving, I actually gain a little bit more, gain 50% more while I'm moving, which is good, like good for just the regen. Because the cost of our spark is 236, and as you can see, it's very sustainable in the map. And then the cost of our 2 lightning conduits as we're going through the map. The first one's 569 and the second one's 791. Now these are going off all the time, like a lot. So if you don't have your mana sorted, it will chunk through mana quite quickly, and you'll notice it more, especially on single target bosses. Alright, the rest of the important notables on the tree, obviously grab magnitude and everything up here as well. Increased chance of shock. You do need increased chance of shock. Pure power, which gives you 2% increased lightning damage per 10 intelligence. So the more intelligence you have, which the more mana that you have, the more damage that you do. Obviously intel over here. And I've got energize and invocated efficiency. Now this is okay. It gives you like 60, 75, 77% more damage. Right, you can change this out. The invoke mana when you invoke a spell doesn't do anything for this setup. So that top one doesn't do nothing. It's just the flat damage for the triggered spells. The rest of it is basically the energy gain. And then this one actually works with one of the skills on the cast on shock. So you've got energy retention, 35% chance to refund half the energy off cost. This one does 25% chance to refund. So you've got a 60% chance to refund the cost of your first cast on shock. That works very well together. The other important notables down here, you've got your Dominism, increased damage if you've triggered a skill recently, and increased energy gain, obviously important for what we're doing. And then you've got Wildstorm, maximum lightning damage, and then 25% chance on consuming a shock on it to reapply it. So it's really good when you're running through maps. If it's got more shocks, it's going off a lot more. Now, the one other important thing that you want to do is, if you are struggling with mana the way I've done it, is I've grabbed conservative casting, reduced mana cost of skills, and mana regen, and the leading up ones are reduced cost. And then I've grabbed these 2 points down here, or this point in particular. So it's mana regen, and it's 15% reduced mana cost while you're not on low mana. And now when I'm never on low mana, as you'll see in the map at the moment, I can free cast Spark whenever I want. I can free cast most of my ability. The curse itself takes a little bit, but as you can see, my mana regen, it goes back up. All right, the biggest amount of mana you're going to lose is on single target. All right, so now we'll just go with my gear. So with my gear, the offhand, that's for Sigil the Power. The stats on it does not matter. Actually, that's just to place it down for a boss. All right, and then you just cast away on this. There are a few other options that you can use. Right, this is just what I use in particular for this setup. Now, for the main setup, this is my wand. So +4 to lightning spells. I was working on a +5 spell wand today. Didn't roll the stats that I wanted, so I'm still using this. Obviously lightning damage, max mana because we want more mana. Percent chance to shock. Intelligence is damage and basically life. Alright, and then the expensive parts of the build. Alright, we are using an ingenuity as well, which increases the bonuses of our rings. Right, so that's about 78%. So I bought myself a Dream Fragments yesterday. All right, I think I paid 75 div for it. It is not 100% needed for the build. You can run it without the build. All right, the ring I was actually using beforehand was actually a rarity ring. So I was using this compared to Dream Fragments. So it is not 100% needed. Right, it's just a nice quality of life addition to not be frozen or chilled. So that's a dealer's choice for this one. The other ring is obviously lightning damage, rarity. I've still got over 100% rarity on this setup. You don't need much more than the 100% rarity for solo play. When you start to get in groups and if you're doing carries or whatever, then you really start to notice a difference. I've been running with my brother, who's actually managed to get his aura bot up to 700 plus rarity. So it's very noticeable when you start running in groups. The gloves, obviously mana, rarity, the resistances that I needed, and then mana. The charm is obviously just a stun charm, so I don't get stunned, or what helps me out of it. The boots, rarity, movement speed, the resistances, intelligence, and mana. The shield, resistances plus the level of all spells, and mana. And then where it gets expensive is the headpiece. I've gone for obviously resistances that I needed, max mana, plus the corruption enchant from a Valorb, which is 27. So in combination with this, my chest piece gives me 56 plus intel resistances, and so does my neck. So, and that's how I'm managing to run double cast on shock as well as Archmage down the bottom here. So this particular, so I think I have 5 spirit left, right, allows me to run all 3 of those with no issue. Right, so on the necklace, you can get a bit of a necklace upgrade if you wanted plus levels of all spells. So that's what you'd look for. You'd go spirit, intel, max mana, 2 max mana, and then 2 level of all spell skills. I think it's a prefix. And then the resistances that you need, preferably you'd want it on a mana regen base with the implicit for the mana regen, but this is just fine. So I think that covers all the gear and all the everything else. Oh, and the one other thing that's expensive is the flask, which is called the melting Melishron. So I don't actually use this until I get hit, or I notice that my mana dips down below half HP, or say if I'm on single target on a boss and this dips down, I would pop it just to give, it's like an oh shit button, if that makes sense. So I'll just do the map showcase. I've opened up one already, just to sort of show you what it is. The map modifiers don't really matter. There's only one that you sort of need to pay attention to, right, which is increased ailment threshold. And what increased ailment threshold does is it lowers how often and how quick this builds up the cast on shock. The other 2 to keep a note out for is elemental resistances on monsters. That lowers your damage. Now obviously we're not relying on sparks damage. Sparks damage is just the delivery system. We're just spreading the spark. Again, if you are just setting this up for the first time and you're looking for more of a budget friendly setup, definitely check out Sugarcane Games, like, on Twitch. She's made a nice YouTube video for it, video showcase. And definitely check that out. She actually got lucky today with an Astromentus, so it's fantastic. Anyway, I'll just show you the map. Obviously the map, 139% more max life. It really doesn't matter the modifiers that you run, because you're going to be off-screening everything anyway. When you get to this point on the setup, it's sort of doesn't really matter what you run. There's a couple of mobs that you need to look out for though. Alright, so these dudes that actually carry the those big wheels, they have an on-death effect. It's not very nice. But you literally don't have to do anything except for press spark and just walk around the map. Occasionally press, you know, your flame wall, just do some added damage if you're standing still for too long. Just try and get to the boss for you, just sort of showcase a little bit. You will start to notice that you're off-screen targets, and you'll hear some loot drop noises off-screen, so something to pay attention to. I've restricted my loot filter as well. I'm running on uber strict. Just something to sort of pay attention to. The one pain in the ass mob type that you want to watch out for is the Eternal Knight. Eternal Knight has got a shield that pops up and reflects all the projectiles back at you. So it's just something to sort of pay attention to. So GGG's actually fixed up a lot of the off-screening and on-death effect stuff going forward, so it's not as bad as it was, especially for the off-screening. But there are still some notable off-screen stuff too, on-death effect stuff to look out for. So this is the boss. You put down your curse, apply that, start casting, and the boss is dead. That's literally how the build plays, and it does that for every target. Obviously, ailment threshold on the maps. More max life until you get geared, until you start pumping up the gear. You do notice it a little bit. Obviously this is a tier 16 because of the +1. That's pretty much how the build works, gamers. The biggest thing when you actually got a fight that takes a little bit longer, like the Arbiter of Ash, or Zeshed, or probably not Zeshed because I one-shot him now. Probably Armored of Ash. That's probably the longest fight that I've had on this build. If you don't get lucky with your shocks, alright, it can take a little bit longer, but you can see in the video that I've had at the start of this, you still do a lot of damage. Like, you're not in the fights very long. So that's pretty much the build, gamers. That's all I really wanted to show you. Obviously I've still got a lot more room to improve and things I want to change, and I'm pushing to level 98 at the moment because I'm 39%. But I've started streaming on Twitch every day now, so check that out if you haven't checked out that already. And definitely give Sugar Cane Games on Twitch a look too, because she does some fantastic work for the low version budget of this build. Anyway, gamers, stay safe until next time, and any questions, hit me up, and I'll speak to you gamers soon. Alright, hooroo.